To understand the present, we must first look to the past. It's a story of ancient prophecies, epic empires, and clashing national dreams, all converging on a single sacred strip of land. A place known by many names: Canaan, Judea, Palestine, Israel. But to whom does this land truly belong? The answer is a story thousands of years in the making, and it begins not with politics, but with a promise. For the Jewish people, the claim is rooted in an ancient biblical covenant. Thousands of years ago, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah flourished here. In their heart was Jerusalem, and at its center, a magnificent temple, the focal point of Jewish life and worship. But this golden age was not to last. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian Empire swept through, conquering the kingdom and destroying the first temple, forcing many into exile. Yet the connection endured. Decades later, they returned, building a second temple upon the ruins of the first. This new era of sovereignty, however, also met a violent end. In 70 AD, the Roman legions crushed a Jewish revolt, razing the second temple to the ground. This catastrophic event scattered the Jewish people across the globe, beginning a nearly 2,000-year diaspora. Yet, even in distant lands, the memory of Jerusalem and the dream of return were never extinguished. As centuries passed, the land itself was transformed. In the 7th century, a new force emerged from the Arabian Peninsula: Islam. Arab armies conquered the region, and Jerusalem became a holy city for this new faith. The Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque were built on the very Temple Mount where the Jewish temples once stood, a site now revered as the place of the Prophet Muhammad's night journey. For over a millennium, the land was home to a predominantly Arab population, ruled by a succession of Islamic empires. The Umayyads, Abbasids, and Fatimids were followed by a brief bloody interlude of European crusaders, then the Mamluks of Egypt. Finally, in the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire took control, ruling for 400 years. Throughout this long history, generations of Arab farmers, merchants, and artisans lived and died here, cultivating the land and building communities that formed the bedrock of Palestinian society. By the late 19th century, powerful new ideas were sweeping across Europe. The rise of nationalism, the belief that every people deserved its own state, was reshaping the continent. For European Jews, this era brought not only new opportunities, but also a vicious new wave of anti-Semitism. In response to persecution, a modern political movement was born: Zionism. Led by thinkers like Theodor Herzl, Zionism argued that the only solution to anti-Semitism was for the Jewish people to return to their ancestral homeland and establish a sovereign state. This idea ignited a passionate movement. The first waves of Jewish pioneers, driven by a mix of ideology and desperation, began immigrating to Ottoman-controlled Palestine. They purchased land, often from absentee landlords, and began establishing new agricultural settlements and towns, determined to build the foundations of a future Jewish nation. The collision course was set with the seismic shock of World War I, which shattered the old world order. The Ottoman Empire collapsed, and in 1917, British forces marched into Jerusalem, taking control of Palestine. That same year, London issued the Balfour Declaration, a fateful document expressing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, while also stating that nothing should prejudice the rights of existing non-Jewish communities. Under the British mandate that followed, Jewish immigration accelerated dramatically, and the Zionist project gained momentum. But for the resident Arab population, this influx was seen as a colonial invasion, a threat to their identity and their claim to the land. Tensions that had been simmering for years began to boil over into protests, riots, and violent clashes. A new chapter of conflict had begun, one that would define the 20th century. With the British mandate faltering, the world looked for a solution. But on the ground, two peoples, each with a profound and deeply felt connection to the same land, were now locked in a struggle for its control. In the hushed chambers of the United Nations, a single decision in 1947 hung heavy in the air: poised to reshape the destiny of a land held sacred by millions. A diplomat's finger traced a line across a map, dividing the British Mandate of Palestine into two states, one Jewish, one Arab. The moment the vote passed, the world split. In the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, Jewish communities erupted in euphoric celebration, dancing as a dream of 2 millennia seemed to be realized. But across the Arab world, a wave of fury crested. Leaders vehemently rejected the plan, and crowds burned effigies in protest. For one people, it was a promise fulfilled; for another, a profound betrayal. The ink on the UN resolution was barely dry when the first shots echoed through the hills of Palestine. The partition plan was not a blueprint for peace, but a catalyst for conflict. A bitter civil war erupted as the remaining British forces, counting down the days to their departure, struggled to maintain order. Jewish militias, like the Haganah, clashed fiercely with Arab irregulars and local volunteers. The roads became death traps, with ambushes turning daily commutes into battles for survival. Villages that had stood for centuries became front lines, and the land, once promised to two peoples, descended into a brutal chaos where neighbor fought neighbor. The dream of statehood was being forged in the crucible of violence. On May 14, 1948, the final British flag was lowered over Jerusalem, marking the end of 3 decades of rule. As the Union Jack descended, a new flag was ready to be raised. In the Tel Aviv Museum, a crowd gathered, holding its breath. David Ben-Gurion, his voice steady and resolute, stood before a portrait of Theodor Herzl and began to read from a scroll. He declared the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel, to be known as the State of Israel. It was a moment of profound historical significance, the culmination of a global movement and the realization of a national aspiration. A nation was born, its birth certificate signed amidst the turmoil of an ongoing war. The celebrations were short-lived. The very next day, the nascent state faced its first existential threat. Armies from 5 neighboring Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, crossed the borders in a coordinated invasion. The civil war had now escalated into a full-scale conventional war. The conflict transformed overnight from scattered skirmishes to organized military campaigns. Egyptian tanks rolled through the Negev desert, Syrian forces advanced from the Golan Heights, and Jordan's Arab Legion laid siege to Jerusalem. For the fledgling Israeli army, a collection of disparate militia groups, it was a desperate fight for survival against overwhelming odds. When the armistice agreements were signed in 1949, the guns fell silent, revealing a radically altered landscape. The map was redrawn, not by UN diplomats, but by the brutal logic of war. Israel had not only survived, but had expanded its territory, now controlling 78% of what had been mandatory Palestine, including West Jerusalem. But this victory came at a staggering human cost. For Palestinians, 1948 became known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. Over 700,000 Arab men, women, and children either fled the fighting or were expelled from their homes and villages. Haunting images of families carrying only what they could, trudging along dusty roads toward an uncertain future as refugees defined this tragic new reality. The war's end left behind 2 starkly different fates. On one side, Israelis celebrated the miracle of their new nationhood, a sovereign state they had fought and died for. On the other, Palestinians languished in refugee camps in neighboring lands, their society shattered and their national aspirations crushed. A new state was born, but a nation was displaced. In this volatile new Middle East, Israel, surrounded by hostile neighbors, would seek allies in unexpected places, leading to a surprising partnership with a non-Arab power, Iran. This unlikely alliance would shape the region's geopolitics for decades to come, adding another complex layer to an already intractable conflict. In the fragile landscape of the post-colonial Middle East, survival often depended on finding friends in the most unlikely of places. For the fledgling State of Israel, established in 1948, the world was a map painted with hostility. It was a tiny Jewish nation, a lonely island surrounded by a sea of Arab states sworn to its destruction. On the edge of this hostile bloc, another power watched with growing unease: the imperial state of Iran, a non-Arab monarchy led by the ambitious Shah. As the tide of Gamal Abdel Nasser's pan-Arab nationalism rose, threatening to engulf the region, both nations were forced to ask the same question. When surrounded by enemies, where do you find an ally? The answer would forge one of history's most secret and consequential partnerships. This alliance was born from a brilliantly simple strategic calculation, conceived by Israel's founding father, David Ben-Gurion. It was called the Periphery Doctrine. Unfolding a map in a Tel Aviv office, Israeli strategists would have traced the outlines of the hostile Arab core. The doctrine was a grand design to leapfrog this immediate ring of enemies and forge connections with the non-Arab states on the region's outer edge. Animated arrows would have stretched from Israel, reaching out towards Turkey, Imperial Ethiopia, and most importantly, Iran. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, saw the world through a similar lens. Nasser's revolutionary rhetoric and his dream of a united Arab republic were a direct threat not only to Israel's existence but also to the Shah's own throne and his vision of a powerful modern Iran dominating the Persian Gulf. United by a common enemy, the two outliers found common cause. Their friendship, however, had to be a clandestine affair. On the world stage, Iran maintained a careful distance, even voting against the UN partition plan that created Israel, and never extending formal diplomatic recognition. But behind this public facade, a deep and powerful partnership flourished in the shadows. This was a relationship built by spies and soldiers, not diplomats. In secret meetings in Tehran and Tel Aviv, agents from Israel's Mossad and the Shah's notorious intelligence agency, Savak, exchanged vital information. They collaborated closely, sharing intelligence on Arab military movements, Palestinian militant groups, and Soviet influence in the region. The military ties ran just as deep. Elite Israeli commandos were dispatched to covertly train their Iranian counterparts, while Israel, in turn, became a key supplier of advanced weaponry and technology to the Shah's rapidly modernizing army, bolstering his military might. The alliance was cemented not just by shared threats, but by powerful economic interests. Iran possessed what Israel desperately lacked: oil. In defiance of Arab boycotts, Iranian oil tankers made their way to the Israeli port of Eilat, providing a lifeline that fueled Israel's economy and military. Together, they embarked on a monumental joint venture, the Eilat-Ashkelon pipeline. This feat of engineering created a land bridge for Iranian oil, bypassing the Egyptian-controlled Suez Canal and giving the Shah a secure gateway to lucrative European markets. In return, the flow of knowledge and expertise went the other way. Israeli agricultural specialists fanned out across Iran, helping to make its deserts bloom, while engineers and construction firms helped build the infrastructure of a modern nation, from dams and irrigation systems to luxury hotels that dotted the Tehran skyline. For a time, the partnership seemed like an unqualified success, a cornerstone of the Shah's power and regional prestige. The alliance had created a gilded facade of stability, transforming Iran into a westernized powerhouse, its ruler secure on his peacock throne. Images from the era show a glamorous monarch, confidently hosting world leaders at lavish state dinners. The calculations of kings and spies had seemingly paid off, creating a bastion of pro-Western power in a turbulent region. But this grand strategy, built in the corridors of power, fatally ignored the growing fury on the streets. A storm was gathering, fueled by a deep-seated resentment of Western influence and secular rule. It coalesced around the stern, unyielding gaze of a cleric living in exile, a man named Ayatollah Khomeini. A revolution was brewing, and it would soon wash the entire alliance away. In the heart of the Cold War, one alliance seemed unbreakable: Forged in shared interests and mutual suspicion of their Arab neighbors, Israel and Iran, under the Shah, had built a partnership that defied the region's logic. It was a clandestine friendship of spies, oil, and weapons, a pragmatic bond that shaped the Middle East for decades. But this story isn't about alliances that last. It's about how, in the blink of an historical eye, a trusted friend became a sworn ideological enemy. This is the story of how the tectonic plates of the Middle East shifted forever, turning partners into adversaries locked in a conflict that continues to define our world. This is the story of how Iran and Israel's secret affair turned into a very public and very bitter divorce. Introduction: The cracks appear. Our story ended with the spectacle of Persepolis, a celebration of 2,500 years of Persian monarchy. The Shah, flanked by world leaders, toasted to a future of prosperity and power, his military armed with the latest Western hardware. But behind the shimmering facade of modernity, a different Iran was simmering. Beneath the surface of petrodollar wealth and military might, a deep and volatile anger was boiling over. For millions, the Shah's regime meant corruption, brutal repression by his secret police, the Savak, and a humiliating subservience to the United States. And as the 1970s wore on, the cracks in the peacock throne began to show, threatening to shatter the entire foundation of his rule. Part 1: The Fall of the Peacock Throne. By 1978, the simmering anger had exploded into a full-blown revolution. The streets of Tehran and cities across Iran became a sea of humanity. Millions of people, from secular students and merchants to devout followers of a long-exiled cleric, united under a single roaring demand: death to the Shah. The Shah, increasingly isolated and ill, vacillated between brutal crackdowns and desperate concessions. But it was too little, too late. The monarch, who saw himself as the heir to Cyrus the Great, had lost control of his country. On January 16, 1979, the world watched as a visibly defeated Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and his wife boarded a plane, officially for a vacation. But everyone knew the truth. They were fleeing into exile, never to return. After 2.5 millennia, the Persian monarchy was finished. Part 2: The Return and the Rhetoric. Just 2 weeks later, another plane landed in Tehran, carrying a figure who would reshape the Middle East. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the charismatic cleric who had guided the revolution from exile in Paris, returned to a rapturous welcome from millions. His arrival marked the beginning of a new radical chapter. In fiery, uncompromising speeches broadcast across the nation, Khomeini laid out his vision for an Islamic republic. He didn't just condemn the Shah's legacy, he targeted its foreign pillars. The United States was branded the Great Satan, the ultimate source of corruption and imperialism. And in a fateful declaration, Israel, the Shah's once secret partner, was designated the Little Satan, a cancerous tumor planted by the West in the heart of the Muslim world that had to be excised. Part 3: From friend to foe in an instant. The change was not gradual, it was immediate and absolute. The once discreet but functional relationship between Tehran and Tel Aviv vanished overnight. One of the new regime's first symbolic acts was to seize the Israeli embassy in Tehran. Revolutionary guards stormed the compound, tore down the Star of David, and summarily ended decades of diplomatic contact. The building wasn't just closed, it was repurposed. Shortly after, the new Iranian leadership triumphantly handed the keys to Yasser Arafat, chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO. The man once seen as an enemy by the Shah's state was now welcomed as a brother in arms. All ties, diplomatic, economic, and military, were severed. The oil that once flowed to Haifa was cut off. The strategic partnership was now a historical artifact. Conclusion: a new war is declared. The new Islamic Republic of Iran had a mission. It was no longer about national interest in the traditional sense. It was about ideology. Its stated goal was to export its revolution across the region, and a central tenet of that mission was the liberation of Jerusalem from Zionist control. To enforce this new vision, the regime created a powerful new military force, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. This was an army loyal not to the nation of Iran, but to the revolution itself. In Tel Aviv, defense officials looked at their maps. The old Arab threats remained, but now a far larger, wealthier, and ideologically fanatical enemy had emerged on the eastern horizon. The game had changed. The era of secret handshakes was over. A new, long, and deadly shadow war was about to begin. In 1979, the game changed forever. For decades, Iran and Israel had been quiet allies, partners in a hostile neighborhood. But the Iranian Revolution swept it all away. In Tehran, the Israeli flag came down, replaced by the flag of the Palestine Liberation Organization. Images of the new supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, were everywhere. The new regime declared Israel the Little Satan, an illegitimate state that had to be wiped off the map. Open war was too costly, too direct. So a new kind of conflict began. A secret war, fought in the shadows with spies, proxies, and assassins. The first major battlefield was Lebanon. When Israel invaded in 1982 to crush the PLO, it created a power vacuum. Into this chaos stepped Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Their mission? To organize, train, and arm local Shia militants who felt disenfranchised and enraged by the Israeli occupation. From these efforts, a new force was born, Hezbollah, the Party of God. What began as a small radical militia grew, with Iranian funding and weapons, into a formidable army entrenched on Israel's northern border. For nearly 2 decades, southern Lebanon became a bloody quagmire, defined by roadside bombs, guerrilla ambushes, and rocket attacks, a constant low-grade war of attrition that would shape the region for years to come. While Hezbollah bled Israel in Lebanon, Iran was pursuing a far more strategic long-term threat, a nuclear program. For Israel, an Iranian atomic bomb was not just a threat, it was an existential one. At the United Nations, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu famously used a cartoonish diagram of a bomb to illustrate to the world how close Tehran was to crossing the red line. But behind the public warnings, a covert war was already underway. A sophisticated computer virus known as Stuxnet mysteriously sabotaged thousands of Iranian centrifuges, setting the program back years. Key Iranian nuclear scientists were systematically eliminated, their cars exploding on the streets of Tehran. Mossad agents, experts in sabotage and infiltration, operated deep inside enemy territory, executing daring operations before melting back into the shadows. Iran's grand strategy was to encircle its enemy. On an animated map, the plan becomes clear: to forge a ring of fire around Israel, using proxy forces to create multiple fronts of conflict. In Gaza, Iran poured money and expertise into Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, funding the construction of attack tunnels and providing the technology for an ever-expanding arsenal of rockets capable of reaching deep into Israel. The chaos of the Syrian civil war presented a golden opportunity. Iran intervened to save the Assad regime, but also to build a land bridge, a contiguous corridor of influence stretching from Tehran through Iraq and Syria, all the way to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel responded with its own war between the wars, a relentless campaign of airstrikes targeting Iranian weapons convoys, command centers, and military bases across Syria. In recent years, the conflict has accelerated, spilling out of the shadows and into the open. The carefully maintained rules of deniability began to break down. The assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the architect of Iran's regional strategy, was a major escalation. In response, Iran-backed militias intensified their attacks on American and Israeli interests. Then came the moment the entire region had feared. For the first time in history, Iran launched a direct state-on-state attack, firing hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles directly at Israel from its own soil. Israel, with its allies, intercepted most of them, but the Rubicon had been crossed. A retaliatory Israeli strike soon followed. The Shadow War is now in the open. On one side, the clerical leadership of Iran, committed to its revolutionary ideology. On the other, the political and military leaders of Israel, determined to ensure their nation's survival. The year is 1979. The flag of a friend is replaced by the banner of a cause. For decades, Israel and Iran, under the Shah, were secret partners. But the Iranian Revolution didn't just topple a king, it shattered an old order. A new war began that day. Not a war of armies marching across borders, but one fought in the shadows. A war of spies, saboteurs, and assassins. For 40 years, this secret conflict would smolder, hidden from the world's view, shaping the destiny of the Middle East. Fast-paced montage, training camps in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. Men in balaclavas raising Hezbollah flags. Quick cuts to close-ups of computer code on a screen with the word Stuxnet visible. Then, a shaky, distant shot of an industrial facility in Iran rocked by an explosion. From the chaos of Lebanon's civil war, a new force emerged. Hezbollah, the party of God. Armed, trained, and lavishly funded by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, it became Tehran's first and most powerful proxy, a dagger pointed at Israel's northern border. As Hezbollah grew, so did Iran's ambitions. Deep underground, its scientists raced to master the atom, but Israel was watching. A new front opened in this shadow war, the digital battlefield. The Stuxnet virus, a weapon of unprecedented sophistication, silently crippled Iranian centrifuges. Across the country, nuclear scientists met untimely ends, and key facilities were rocked by mysterious explosions. Each side traded blows, each move calculated, each attack deniable. The conflict remained just beneath the surface, a deadly game of cat and mouse played for the highest stakes. An animated map of the Middle East materializes. Red lines snake out from Iran, encircling Israel through Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. The lines glow ominously. Cut to footage of an Israeli F-16 streaking across the Syrian sky, followed by a precision missile strike on a convoy of trucks. Iran's strategy became clear: to forge a ring of fire around its enemy. By arming proxies in Gaza, entrenching its forces in Syria, and bolstering Hezbollah in Lebanon, Tehran aimed to surround Israel, deterring a major attack and creating a constant state of pressure. For years, the Israeli Air Force waged a relentless campaign in the skies over Syria, striking thousands of Iranian targets, weapon shipments, command posts, and militia bases. It was a war before the war, a constant low-level conflict that kept the ring of fire from closing completely. But every strike, every counter-strike, only wound the spring tighter. The Shadow War was nearing its breaking point, setting the stage for an unprecedented escalation. The music intensifies. The screen fills with dramatic night vision footage. Hundreds of glowing objects, drones and missiles, are seen streaking across the sky toward Israel. Cut to the Israeli sky, lit up by interceptor missiles from Iron Dome and Arrow systems, creating a symphony of light and explosion. The scene then shifts to a swift, powerful shot of an Israeli missile launching in retaliation. Then in April 2024, the shadows vanished. For the first time in history, Iran launched a direct state-on-state attack, unleashing a massive barrage of over 300 drones and missiles against Israel. The world held its breath as the swarm crossed the night sky. But Israel and its allies were ready. The heavens erupted in a spectacle of defense as layers of advanced missile shields, the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and the Arrow system, intercepted 99% of the incoming threats. The attack was a failure, but it shattered a 45-year-old taboo. Israel's response was swift and precise, a clear message that the era of hidden warfare was over. A new terrifying chapter had begun.